Hi everyone, just a quick recap of our meeting yesterday since I forgot to record it. We downloaded the data from the short survey that everyone took and I cleaned it up a little, and so here's the data. We have our questions in the first row. So our questions were, which do you prefer? And our responses were dogs or cats. We had select the correct statement, and it's I'm an only child or I have siblings. Then it asked what color hair do you have with answer choices. Do you consider yourself a night owl or a morning person? And then what is your favorite season? So all of our variables are nominal level variables. So we have categories for responses, so dogs versus cats, only children versus I have siblings. First, we look to see what is our total sample size or the total number of responses for participants. So our first row is our questions, and our data, which I highlighted here in green, our data goes down to row 24. So we need to subtract 1 for the row for questions. So we have a total sample size or a total number of participants of 23. A lot of times you'll see that written as N equals 23. So total number of participants, total N of 23. Then we use the COUNTIF formula in Excel to get our frequencies of responses to some of these questions. So the first thing that we looked at is we typed in equal and COUNTIF to get our COUNTIF function. So the description is counts the number of cells within a range that meet a given criteria. I'm going to select this. Then I ask for range of data. So I'm interested in this question, preference for pets. So I select my data, I type in a comma, and then it wants to know what criteria, what am I counting? So I want to count all of the people who reported that they preferred dogs. So that was 20. Then we look to see, okay, and it should be pretty obvious, but if we count it, select our data, and then ask it to tell us all the people who prefer cats. Of course, it's 3, because as we know, we have 23 total responses. So 20 people said that they preferred dogs, 3 people said that they preferred cats. And so we said, okay, if we want to start looking at proportions and percentages based on these frequencies, we could ask, well, what is the proportion of the total number of people who liked dogs? So we have 20 out of 23 total participants who said that they liked dogs. So that gives us a proportion of 0.87. And so to get our percentage, of course, we just multiply this by 100 to give us 86.96% of our sample preferred dogs. One thing that we could do is we could take 100%, subtract this number to get our percentage that preferred cats, or what I'm going to do is take our 3 divided by our total sample size of 23 to get our proportion that preferred cats, and then I could also multiply this by 100 to get a percentage. So just over 13% preferred cats. Then we looked at frequency tables that present frequencies across 2 separate variables. And so I looked at season and hair color here. We said, okay, we want to narrow this down a little bit and just look at people who said that they had brown hair or black hair, and people who said that they liked fall or spring. And so what we did was we got the counts of the people who had brown hair and said that they liked fall. So that was 7 people who had both brown hair and liked fall. We said we wanted the people who had brown hair and liked spring, people who had black hair and liked fall, and people who had black hair and liked spring. So this presents frequencies across two different variables here. So what I could do is look, regardless of preference for season, we say in this table, how many total people have brown hair? And so that would be 7 plus 1, so that gives us a total of 8. I can say, okay, regardless of preference for season, how many total people in this table had black hair? So that was 3 plus 3, which gave us 6. And then we also got our column totals that I present here. So regardless of hair color, how many people preferred fall? And regardless of hair color, how many people preferred spring? To get our total number of participants in this table, we would add together or sum these 4 cells. So 7 plus 3 plus 1 plus 3 would give us a total of 14. And so we talked a little bit about if you are given a frequency table that presents data across 2 separate variables, how could you calculate proportions or percentages that are specific to maybe certain types of questions that we would ask? So for instance, we looked here to say, okay, what percentage or what proportion of people who like fall had brown hair? So here we're interested in just the people who like fall. So what proportion of people who liked fall? So our total of 10 people, just people who like fall. What proportion of these people had brown hair? Well, that was 7 out of 10. So a proportion of 0.7 or 70% of people who liked fall had brown hair. We could look at here the proportion of people who have black hair who said that they like spring. So again, I'm interested in just a segment of this table. So I'm looking at just the people who have black hair. I want to know of this total, what proportion of those said that they liked spring? Well, that was 3 people. So 3 out of 6 gives us a proportion of 0.5 or 50% of people who had black hair liked spring. We could ask proportions or percentages that pertain to the total number of participants. So I could say, out of everyone in this data set, right, for this table, what proportion of the total number of people had brown hair? So that would be 8 people who had brown hair total, regardless of preference for season, out of our 14 total participants presented in this table. So that would give us a proportion of 0.57 or 57% of these 14 people had brown hair. And so that was the summary of what we looked at in our meeting. We also had a question about the Big Mac extra credit activity, and that was due to the fact that we had a change in the reporting on the website where they don't actually report the calories due specifically to fat. And so I looked that up on a separate website. And so that was the announcement that was made in the modification to that document, where I said, report calories from fat as 250 calories. And so use that 250 to answer question 1, 2, and 3. And then for question 4, there was a little bit of confusion because if you go to that calculator, again, it's not going to tell you any modifications due to changes in calories from fat. But if you use that data that you have. So for mine, I have 30 grams of fat and I have 250 calories from fat. And so I can use those two numbers to calculate how many calories I have per gram of fat. And so I would take my 250 divided by 30, and that gave me 8.33 calories per gram of fat. And so then when I make my modifications, right, it'll update the total calories. And then I'll also update my grams of fat. And so, for instance, the first thing that I did was I said, okay, well, let's take off the bun, right? What if we don't have the bun? And that made my calories drop from 550 down to 340. So I had 550 calories originally. When I subtracted the bun, I had 340 for my total calories. And then I had a change from 30 grams of fat to 27 grams of fat. And so before I said, okay, well, we've got 8.33 calories per gram of fat. So what I need to do is multiply these together. So now I've got 23 grams of fat times my 8.33. So my calories from fat changed from 250 to 224.91. And so now to get my percentage of calories due to fat, I would take this new calories from fat divided by my new total calories. And I get a proportion of 0.66. I could multiply that by 100, right, to get my percentage. And so actually my calories due to fat went up by subtracting the bun. So now I have 66.15% of the calories due to fat. And it's probably because it's shifting that equation a little bit. When I take away the bun, there's less calories that are attributed to carbohydrates, for instance. And it seems as though the bun is not my main fat contributor, but maybe my main carbohydrate contributor. And so it's actually increasing the percentage of calories out of the total that is due to fat. And so you can make some other changes and do similar calculations to see how that percentage due to fat is changing by making those modifications. But send me an email, let me know if you have any questions or if you're confused by this. All right, and don't forget to respond to the survey so that we can schedule our Q&A session for next week. For anyone who has questions about the homework or the quiz or anything so far.